Hello, welcome to the Rice Research Station Field Day Breeding Stop. I'm Adam Famoso. I'm a rice breeder here at the Rice Research Station. Today I'm going to give an overview of our breeding program and some potential new releases and some pending releases. The breeding program here, the inbred breeding program, we focus on three major herbicide classes: Clearfield, Previsia, and conventional herbicides. We also focus on medium grain and long grain market classes, and I'm going to give a bit of an overview of some of those key segments and some of the materials coming through the pipeline. First, our breeding program, we utilize the station here, off-station nurseries in Puerto Rico, winter nurseries, as well as on-trial yield test at cooperators throughout the state. So this year, our program has planted about 7,500 yield plots throughout the state of Louisiana and neighboring states. About 65,000 panicle rows, and we've made about 500 breeding crosses for the next cycle of the breeding program. I'm now going to talk about some of the new pending releases and varieties in the pipeline. I'll start with conventional long grains. First, we have a new variety that we're strongly considering releasing at the end of this year. We have a foundation seed field, about 5 acres. That variety is tested as 2140. It's right to my left. Next to me on the other side is Chenier. Chenier is the most widely grown conventional long grain in the state of Louisiana, so we'll kind of compare them to that. Chenier is actually one of the parents of this line. The pedigree of this line is Chenier by Mermentol. Mermentol is the second most widely grown variety in Louisiana. So 2140 is very similar to Chenier in many aspects. You can see just looking at the plots from out there, they're similar height, similar maturity. The main difference is 2140 has our more typical amylose cooking type, whereas Chenier has a slightly higher amylose cooking type. The grain quality, Chenier is a very high grain quality, package quality type of rice. 2140 is a little lower grain quality in terms of chalk. It's slightly more chalky, and it's a slightly shorter grain, but still very good grain quality. The thing we're most excited about this line in terms of the release is the yield potential. This line has consistently out-yielded Chenier over the last, 4 years in trials, anywhere from 5 to 10% yield advantage on a given year. We would very likely release this line at the end of this year, which would be available commercially for 2022. Right behind 2140 is another experimental conventional line. This line, 2207, has been tested in multi-location yield trials now for 3 years. It also is similar to Chenier in many of the agronomic characteristics. However, this line has very, very similar grain quality Chenier, so very good grain quality, similar grain length and chalk. It also has the intermediate amylose cook type like the 2140. But one of the big advantages of this line is the disease package. It contains the PETA blast resistance gene. We see very good blast resistance in this line. It also has shown good resistance to bacterial panicle blight in Dr. Gross disease nursery. And these disease resistance observations have translated to performance in the field. Some of our all-station locations are very, very strong disease pressures, and this line has maintained its yield very well compared to the other lines in that location. This line is still in its second year of widespread testing. In the last 2 years of multi-location testing, it's been on par with 2140 in that 5 to 10% yield advantage over Chenier. So we will see how this line performs this year. We have it throughout the state and neighboring states, but this is another very promising conventional line to potentially follow up the 2140. Okay, the next line I will talk about is a medium grain conventional line, tested as 2227. This is a line that was developed between a cross of Jupiter and Neptune. It has performed very well in our trials the last 3 years. Last year, it was really on par, just kind of on average to yield of Titan and Jupiter, which are the two most widely grown medium grains in the South. In 2018, though, this line showed significant yield advantage over Jupiter, so we're still continuing testing. We'll see how it does this year. About anywhere from 8 to 10% yield advantage on average in 2018. So we're hopeful we'll see that yield advantage again here in 2019. As you see, we're standing 22, 27 here. Here is Titan and Jupiter. You can see this line is a couple inches shorter than Titan. It's in between maturity, so Titan is the earliest medium grain variety, so it's a little later than Titan, but it's a couple days, three days or so earlier than Jupiter. Grain quality wise, very similar. Improved chalk, lower chalk than Jupiter, but similar on the milling. And then the other thing with this line is disease resistance. We've seen it to be similar disease resistance to Jupiter in our disease nursery, but this line does contain the PIZ blast resistance gene, which Jupiter does not. So in some years we might expect to see improved blast resistance from 22-27. So this is the third year of multi-location testing for this line. We'll have a much better idea of the future of this line after this year's testing. Okay, so the next variety I'm going to talk about is a Clearfield long grain. This is a variety that's going to be released through Horizon Ag. It's called CLL 17. It's currently in seed production. We had a foundation field last year of this line, and now it's in seed production throughout the South. This line is a cross between CL 131 and Trenas. It's shown very good yield. It was first tested in multi-location test in 2016. It contains the blast resistance gene PETA, so we see very good blast resistance on this line. Sheath blight, quite similar to what we see with CL 153 and CL 111, so certainly in that susceptible range for sheath blight. But the main advantage of this line again is the yield compared to CL 153, which is our most widely grown Clearfield long grain in Louisiana. This line pretty consistently has shown anywhere 5 to 8% yield advantage across the years. Grain quality wise, it's a slightly shorter grain than CL 153 and a slightly more chalky grain, but not to any real concern, but it's probably not going to be a package quality right off the bat like CL 153 based on the data we have so far. Mills well. Maturity wise, it's in between 153 and CL 111, CL 111 being the earliest variety out there. So this line should be available commercially through Horizon Ag next year in 2021. Behind that line, we have another one coming that looks very, very promising, tested as 2026. This line is again a Clearfield long grain line, shows very good grain quality, right on par with CL 153, very good milling. Contains the PETA blast resistance gene, and maturity again is right in between CL 153 and CL 111. This line is now in its third year of multi-location testing. It was our top yielder in our trials last year, so looking very, very promising. Did very well in the URN trials, which is the cooperative yield testing we do with the other universities throughout the South. As you can see, agronomically, height, heading wise, it's very similar to CL 153. So again, we will see how this line does this year, and it's another one we potentially might begin purifying and increasing this winter in Puerto Rico if it continues to perform like it has the last few years. Okay, now we're at a foundation field, a 20-acre foundation field of PVL02. This is the most recent Previsia variety released by the Rice Station. This is a field that Rick Zonbreaker, foundation seed manager, planted at a rate of about 8 pounds per acre. We have a 20-acre field here. PVL02 was available this year in 2020 on a limited seed. In 2021, there'll be quite a bit more seed available. PVL02 offers some big advantages over PVL01, primarily in yield. In our trials over the last 3 to 4 years, this line has consistently out-yielded PVL01. I think on average over the 4 years, it's upwards of 15%. So definitely improved yield over PVL01. We also see improved tolerance to the Previsia herbicide, much less issues of the yellow flash and being dinged up on when the applications of the herbicide are doubled up. We also find this variety is quite a bit earlier than PVL01, anywhere from 7 to 10 days earlier than 01. It's typically 2 to 3 inches taller. So there's a lot of benefits of this variety. The last being the milling. PVL01 has a very, very long, slender grain, very nice grain, but likely as a result of that, it doesn't always mill so well, whereas PVL02 is a much better yielder. We often in our plot trials see PVL02 milling at 65%. Part of the reason for that is likely PVL02 is on the other end of the spectrum of 01. It's a really shorter grain for a long grain, so it's still a long grain variety, cooks like a long grain variety, a southern U.S. long grain, but the grain length here is closer to about 6.5 millimeters, whereas PVL01 is extremely long at about 7.3. Our standard southern U.S. varieties are often in the range of 6.9 or so. So the grain length of this is definitely on the shorter side, good on the chalk, low chalk compared to the other varieties on the market. So all around, this variety I think is going to take over some of the acres of PVL01, mainly for the yield and the milling it offers. Okay, now we're in a field of a potential PVL03 candidate line. We have 4 sister lines from the same population. The population is PVL01 crossed by Catahoula. These 4 lines have done very, very well in the last 2 years of testing. We amplified and purified them in Puerto Rico this past winter, and we have a small 1 acre increase of 4 lines in this field. This field behind me was planted at 5 pounds per acre, so a very low seeding rate. And we're testing these in parallel. We have tests throughout Louisiana and neighboring states through collaborators. At the end of this year, we'll likely make a final decision on whether we're going to go forward with any of these lines and also which one. So the field I'm standing in here is our top candidate line. We're testing this as 2074. This is a Previsia long grain variety. Some of the things we're most excited about these candidate lines, all of them have the PETA blast resistance gene. So blast resistance has been one of our priorities since the first Previsia line was released. The PVL01 and PVL02 both are susceptible to blast, with PVL01 being very susceptible. So having the blast resistance alone will be a very big step up in the Previsia technology. In addition, this line has a very nice grain length right in between PVL02, which is on the shorter side, and PVL01, which is on the very long side. This is about a 7.1 millimeter grain, low chalk, very similar to PVL02, about 5% chalk in our trials last year, a little bit more chalk than PVL01, but still a very, very low chalk line. And yield-wise, this line in our 2 years of testing has consistently out-yielded even PVL02. So we're seeing a yield advantage over 02, we're seeing improved grain quality and blast resistance. So all the major characteristics seems to be an improvement. Our biggest hesitation at this point with these lines is that we've only had 2 years of testing, so this will be our 3rd year of testing, and hopefully after this year of testing we'll have enough confidence in the yield of this line to move forward. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this stop at the breeding station on our field day. I'd like to just take a minute to express my thanks to the Rice Research Board and the checkoff dollars. Everything we do depends so much on that support from the board and from the growers, and we really appreciate that, and we really do our best to make sure we put those resources to the best use for the industry. And last, I'd like to thank the folks who work in the breeding program. This has been a challenging year, as you can imagine. A lot of the things with the coronavirus really blew up in the middle of our planting, and we were still on a skeleton crew, able to work alternate schedules and get everything in the ground. Just extreme dedication from the staff, and I'm just can't express my appreciation to them enough. So in the breeding program, we have Miss Karen Beerb, Miss Valerie D'Artes, Gavin Guidry, Brady Williams, Joseph John. And then in the marker lab, which is a very key integral component to our process, we have Dr. Patricia Jira and Jennifer D'Artes. And then last, graduate students. We have 2 graduate students, Raul and Tommaso, who contribute in all aspects of the breeding program, as well as leading their own projects. And then last, postdoc Christopher Hernandez, who's based up at Cornell University, and we have an excellent collaboration with the folks up there, Kelly Robbins and Susan McCooch, where Chris works with them in developing a lot of our prediction technologies, which we will be moving forward in the future. So with that, I'd like to wrap up and thank you for joining us today.